All right. Well, I guess, welcome. We always look forward to these meetings because it does keep us up to date on what's going on, at your end of the, street, so to speak.
It's funny because I said to Bill Walker, it's good for us too, because every year I do this and when I get to the end of the presentation, wow, we really did a lot. We really did.
It does kind of put in perspective because, you're so busy doing things, you don't realize how much piles up and,
right.
Because you're just doing it.
You're always worried about what's not getting done, but you
Right.
never take the time to
look back at what was accomplished, and
Right.
that's always a good thing. And it's just, it's a shame people don't come to hear it, but it is what it is. So the floor is yours,
All right.
but I think you need a
Hold
microphone.
on one second.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. So just for the audience that's out there in TV land, Terry Harmon is not present with us physically, but she is online, on the phone, and will be able to join us by phone, and that gives us the quorum. Okay, good. You have anything to say before we start, or just give them the floor? All right, you need a microphone, I'm afraid.
All right. I don't know. So tonight I have two of my board members here, Jack Butler, who's our chairman, and Ken Woods, our treasurer. Thank you for being here. Terry Funk from Gilmore is also here. I'm going to here so I can be in front of the microphone.
Should have given Eric a ride. You should have given Eric a ride.
Jack, this is 3 times in as many weeks. You know that.
I know. There'll be another one next week.
All right, so Dennis, you want to just go to the first slide there? So this is just our general kind of statistics for the year. First, I've been telling you probably for the past 3 years that we had planned to rebrand the authority. We're finally getting that ball rolling. We have contracted with a company to do the first phase of the project. It's going to include more than just branding. We've made, as you all know, massive changes in the complexity of the operations of the water system. Licensing requirements, because of the complexity, have increased. Regulatory requirements have gone through the roof. So we actually are going to do this as a phased project to include strategic planning and an organizational assessment, just looking at how things have changed and how that needs to reflect in the reorganization of the authority.
I have a tagline, is that?
Yeah, that's.
Community Connect is already done, so.
God.
Yeah, that would have been good for you, but.
Now, I don't want to set, unreasonable expectations because this is going to be a phased project, so, but we are at least started on that now. So I have some statistics there. I showed you current numbers versus last year numbers. I don't have to go through all of those. One thing I do want to touch on specifically is the Notify system, which is our robocall reverse 911 system. In the past 12 months, we've done 197 campaigns. So what constitutes a campaign? So we'll send out emails and phone calls when somebody's bill appears to be higher than it has been in the past. We'll send out notices when we're flushing, notices when there's a main break, project updates. So in total, for the past 12 months, we've 197 different campaigns we have launched. And those constituted over almost 5,000 voice calls and a little over 5,000 emails. You always like to hear an update on this. So our customer emergency contact information, we continue our, our efforts there. We routinely request contact information, via our website, our bills, social media, of course, and then every other year we issue a letter, a standalone letter, to attempt to collect information for those that we don't have it for. So, we're making some progress. You'll see on the phone only, it went from, it actually went down, and that's because of account changes and new accounts. A lot of people are going to mostly email. They don't want calls, they want emails. So, 6,700 customers, we have both. Okay, meter replacement. So this is an advanced metering infrastructure. Most of the authority's meters are at the end of their useful life. And we want to provide our customers with, higher quality of service in terms of, monitoring for leaks, leak alarms, on-demand readings, and this infrastructure will allow us to do that while at the same time upgrading the infrastructure that's needed anyway. We've already put, I think, notification in 2 township newsletters. Before we actually begin, we'll be putting in billing inserts with notices on our website, social media, etc. The antennas have been installed, so there's 2 antennas installed that will serve to read the meters. One is on Maple Tank and the other one is on Lower State Road Tank. So they're not powered yet, but they have been installed. So that's the next step of the process, get those powered, install a modem, and then we can get started in actually transitioning some of the accounts that already have the advanced meters. And then for the rest of the township where they don't exist currently, we'll do the installation in cycles. So we'll select different chunks of the township and do them each at a time. At that time, when it's coming up for a particular area to be done, the property owners will get an individual letter. And that letter is going to, describe the program, and it also, the vendor provides a website where people can go on and electronically schedule their appointments. It is going to be a 2 to 3 year project. It was originally planned to be like a 1 to 2, but with supply chain issues, it's now been expanded to 2 to 3. As I said, the goal there is to actually improve our overall customer service. And these meters, not unlike the ones that we already have, maintain their accuracy over a 20-year lifetime. Okay, legislative. Senate Bill 597, I'm not sure if any of you have heard about this, but this passed the Senate in was either the end of 2020 or the beginning of 2021. And it has been referred now to the House Energy and Environmental Committee. This bill was actually, is actually highly supported by your private water and water suppliers. They like it because it actually encourages municipalities to sell their systems. So they had a hearing in Harrisburg in August, and we attended, as well as many other water suppliers from across the state. We were all there to talk about the things that in this bill that are actually redundant to regulations that already exist. And the meeting went very well, and the committee was very receptive. And it's actually now, they've kind of, not really tabled it, but it's been kind of set aside because they have indicated that there will need to be, if the bill is even passed, will need to be modifications to it to address the various testimony. So it's not dead, but it may
sit in committee for a long time.
It could sit in committee, and the form of the bill, if it is ultimately adopted, could be different than the one that we are looking at right now. So EPA and PFAS. So everybody knows EPA issued new health advisories in June of this year. PFAS, PFOA, the health advisories are in the parts per quadrillion. So basically what that means is it's non-detect. You cannot detect down to parts per quadrillion right now. So I want to give credit to council where credit is due, because Horsham, as you know, adopted a non-detect standard in 2016. So when these new health advisories came out, we were able to just issue a statement that says, we're already in compliance. So as I said, kudos to you guys. And so federal MCLs for PFAS and PFOA are expected by the end of this year. But interestingly, Pennsylvania adopted their MCL today for PFAS and PFOA. So for PFAS, it's 18, for PFOA, 14. We were kind of wondering if they were actually going to adopt it, given that EPA issued a new health advisory. But it ends up that they did. Interestingly, it was adopted as originally published. So when they published it, there's a comment period, and people can submit comments, which we did, and many, many others did. But it was adopted as it was originally written. So there were no changes based on the comments that they received. So for PFAS, we're basically going to be looking at like 3 regulatory frameworks in the period of maybe a year, let's say. So Pennsylvania's MCL could go into effect as early as 2023. And the first step would be that all water suppliers will have to do quarterly monitoring for a year. Because it's so late in the year, it may be deferred to 2024. But at the same time, we've got EPA that's looking probably to develop their MCL by the end of this year, and generally you have 3 years to comply with an EPA regulation. At the same time, under UCMR, which I'll talk about a little bit more, under this round of UCMR, all water suppliers in the country, all large water suppliers, I should say, have to test for 29 PFAS compounds starting next year. So my hope is that they will align all of these different, frameworks, and so that, we and many other suppliers are not forced to do, numerous rounds of testing, and, particularly in our case where we have tens of thousands of data points regarding PFAS. So also, you probably heard there's a CERCLA proposal to designate PFAS and PFOA as hazardous substances. There have been various bills introduced over the past couple of years. So this did not come as a surprise. It was published on September 6th. There's a 60-day comment period. We will be commenting on that. And then the last one is just an FYI. EPA has engaged a Drinking Water Advisory Council to look at strengthening an existing rule. It's the disinfection byproduct rule. That won't affect us very much because disinfection byproducts are generated more by surface and the systems that use hypochlorite, I think. So they use a combination of chlorine and ammonia. We don't do that. So I'm not anticipating that to be.
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Sure.
So Pennsylvania adopted 18 to 14.
Yes.
18 and 14. And EPA federal hasn't out with theirs till the end of the year.
Right.
What if they come out lower than Pennsylvania? Does Pennsylvania have to change it?
So the rule is that if the federal government issues a standard, the states can adopt a standard equivalent or more stringent than the federal standard. So
the hope is that the federal comes out with lower standards.
Right, and then Pennsylvania
higher
standard will not.
standards,
Well, if that could happen.
Well, I mean, a higher standard would be a lower number.
In that case, we would
Yeah.
have to comply with the 18 and 14.
Which we're all right with anyway.
Which we're, yes.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
That's okay.
The guidelines, Mark, just so you know, on federally in the Safe Drinking Water Act, when they set a standard, they have to consider cost. So they have to balance cost and benefit. So there's a chance they could be higher because, not that Pennsylvania didn't consider cost, but there are more strict guidelines on what the cost impacts can be for them to set the standard lower or higher, however we want to interpret that.
Okay, so lead and copper, I've reported on this the past couple meetings as well, past couple years. So lead and copper rule was actually just revised in January 2021. Those revisions will go into effect 2024. Those revisions predominantly relate to lead service lines, and there are no known lead service lines in Horsham Township. So again, shouldn't be a huge impact on us. We had, prior to PFAS, we were on a triennial sampling frequency. So sampling is done every 3 years, and for all suppliers, it's done at the same time. So once we added the GAC, it was determined to be a change in treatment, and they placed us back on what's called initial monitoring, which is, you do 2 monitoring periods and over 6 months, 2 consecutive 6-month monitoring periods. So we did that at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. The way we did it is by identifying qualified homes. They call them high-risk homes. But basically what that means is if the home has a lead service line, which we have no lead service lines in the township, or if the home was built between like 1982 and 1986, and has copper pipes with leaded solder. So leaded solder was banned in '86. So the pool that we have to choose from is pretty limited. So we were very fortunate to have been able to identify 68 qualified homes and people who are willing to be part of the sampling program. And we offered them $15 bill credits every time we have to sample. So after doing the 2019-2020 monitoring, the results were consistent with historical results, so we got approved to do an annual monitoring, which we then did in 2021. Those results were also consistent with historical. So we were approved in 2021 to go back to triennial monitoring, but it just so happened in the next triennial cycle was in 2022. So we just performed sampling again in September. Again, results comparable to historical levels, and we shouldn't have to do this again now till 2025. Touched on UCMR a little bit. Everybody knows UCMR because that's how we learned of PFAS. We completed our UCMR 4 monitoring. No results were above any health advisory or MCLs, so we're good there. UCMR 5 is going to be starting next year between 2023 and 2024. My guess is that we'll probably end up somewhere right in the middle on the timeline. The last cycle we were roughly in the middle. So that, I kind of think we'll end up end of 2023 before we start that. So it was published, UCMR 5 was published, 29 PFAS compounds, and in order to analyze for those, we need to perform 2 separate methods. So they now have 3 methods where you can analyze for PFAS. The original method, everybody's familiar, 537. That was the one that was used when we did UCMR 3. So now they've developed a method 533 and a method 537.1. And the combination of those methods, we can detect 29 different PFAS compounds. So we'll be using those methods to analyze for those compounds, most of which we've already tested for. And then also lithium is kind of a set aside. So you sample at the sources. For groundwater, you have to do 2 times in a year. For surface water, it's actually 4 times in a year. So
do you do pre-filter, post-filter, or
raw?
Raw. Okay.
Yeah.
So pre-filter.
Yeah.
Will you also, just for your own, like, will you? But they could be dramatic. They could be different, right? So you take the raw water testing.
Well, actually, it might be entry point.
I think it's entry
It might be
point.
entry point. It's not raw. It's entry point.
Okay.
So it's going into the system.
So you've tested for many of these compounds already, and this will increase the frequency of the testing?
This will just increase our knowledge base as far as what other PFAS compounds might be present in our water. So we know, we haven't been testing just for the 7 that were in method 537. We've been testing for a lot more, but this will actually get us 29, 29 compounds will have been analyzed across the system. So water system improvements, a couple things that we're working on, disinfection conversion. We currently use gas chlorine for disinfection. We're going to be converting from gas to sodium hypochlorite. We just put in our permit to DEP to make that modification. This is a much safer method of disinfection. We're also looking at doing improvements to the lime kiln pipe pressure reducing valve. So what that is that's the point in the system where we can transfer flows from the high zone into the low zone. Then we also have a booster at Horsham Road where we can transfer flows from the high zone into the low zone, or pump flows from the low zone into the high zone. So we're looking at improvements on both of those. And that has a lot to do with how the system has changed with PFAS, wells that we still have out of service because they don't have treatment. We're also in the process of renewing our operations agreement with North Wales. We're going to just make a few enhancements, but that comes up for renewal in December. And then system expansions. So I think the council knows that generally the authority does not go out pursuing, system expansions. It's expensive for the property owners. But we do have some areas in the township where we don't have water. There's not a lot of them, but there are areas out there. There's some section on Lower State Road. There's a little section on McKean, right near Lime Kiln. Couple sections on Welsh, like near Arbor Glen there, and there's another section on Welsh by Tennis. So there's a few areas. There are also additional areas that were, we actually just did a physical survey because property owners requested a connection under Myria. So we have an area where we don't have mains in Butler Pike, and that's between Lime Kiln and Welsh, and then we also have a section of Welsh between Butler and Lime Kiln. So, Myria will actually, help to try to kind of close some of those gaps that are in the system. Cross connection, that was a new program that we implemented last year. Definition of cross connection and backflow is there, primarily dictated by the plumbing code, but as the water supplier, we have the ability to enforce. So we contracted with National Water Specialties Company in 2021. We had already been doing a program. We would follow up with properties to make sure that they were testing their backflow. But this program that we signed on with North National is much more robust. And so we have 689 properties that actually received notices between 2021 and 2022. 254 backflow devices were tested and or installed. So actually it was only 12 devices that were existing and passed testing. The rest of them all had to be upgraded or replaced because they just weren't up to current standards. So supply source, sustainability, redundancy, resiliency, we talk about this a lot. This strengthens the authority's mission, protect health and safety. And the way we do that is through various means. So redundancy, purchased water. As you know, we have competing suppliers from whom we can buy water, so that puts us in a, we're in a very fortunate position there that some water suppliers don't have available to them. So our North Wales agreement actually expires or automatically rolls over in 2023. We did have to, over the summer, ask North Wales for a temporary increase because we had expected that 1017 and 21 would be back in service by now, and with the drought, so we needed to buy a little extra water from them. And we also revised we got a temporary revision to our subsidiary allocation permit. That's where DEP says you can buy so much water from this supplier. We are looking at possibly raising the aqua minimum to get a better rate. Aqua's rates are 3+ times the rates that we're getting from North Wales. And the more water we commit to buying, the lesser price we pay. But it's a balancing act. You know, we don't want to be committed to buying too much water because we also have our own sources. So, well evaluation and rehabilitation.
Real quick,
Yep.
what is the percentages of what are bought versus what we use?
So, prior to PFAS, we were about 15 to 20. Just this past July, we were at 42. Now, of course, that was in the height of the drought. But I think on average, since PFAS, probably around 30%.
That may go down as things.
Yes. Yeah,
Let's
and
come
I'll
back.
kind of touch a little bit on
Okay.
how that may happen, how that might happen. It's a good point. So well evaluation and rehab, so that's sustainability. So what we do is we analyze our wells, we look at pump efficiency, we look at the yield of the well, how the capacity might have changed. And that allows us to maintain yield, perform any maintenance that might be needed, or rehabilitation that might be needed in order to restore yield. So this is part of our sustainability project. Well 22 as well. So Well 22 was put back in service as part of the PFAS long-term plan. But after it was put back in service, after having been down for so long, the chloride levels in the raw water became elevated. And this is a regional issue because so many suppliers around here shut down groundwater sources. Chloride levels ended up elevating pretty much regionally. So chloride comes from road salt. Well 22 is in an industrial complex. There's a lot of impervious surface right near there. So we did do a study of Well 22, and we are looking at feasibility for additional treatment at that site. So basically, we want to see what we can do to sustain the use of Well 22. Source exploration is another effort. We are going to be looking at, so Well 6, which is off of Norristown Road right near the power line trail, that has been out of service since 2009 due to some water quality issues. We are now looking at exploring a potential Well 6A. So DRBC says you can pump X amount of gallons out of the ground. So we have a cushion. We still have we have more capacity available to us in terms of our DRBC allocation than we're actually currently pumping. So again, for redundancy purposes and sustainability purposes, we now want to explore this Well 6A as a potential source. Auxiliary power, that's for our resiliency. If we learned nothing from Ida last year, this year we were proactive. We have 2 rented generators on site right now that are intended just to get us through hurricane season. We've been working on putting permanent generators in at Wells 20 and 22, but that's been delayed by over a year due to supply chain. In 2023, we're looking to do a permanent generator at Well 19, and then also to purchase a portable generator that could run Wells 420 and 26, based on need. Water main replacements. So our infrastructure, kind of improvement program did have to go on hold a little bit during, PFAS short-term and long-term plan implementation. We have stepped up our efforts now in infrastructure improvements. So main replacements, I reported last year, we replaced 3,100 feet of existing water main. In 2020, 2021, we did 1,300 feet of new main and another 6,700 of mains replaced. 2022 into 2023, 2022 to 2023, we had Oak Hill was our planned area for this year. So that's about 3,000 feet. We applied to the local share account for a grant. We should hear about that grant next month. So what we're hoping is that we will get that grant, And that we will then do, complete that phase with the grant funds. And then we want to do a second phase, which is on Butternut and Hollis, and those areas are highlighted in yellow. And that's about another 3,200 feet. Yes.
More than halfway for your time, and you're not.
Okay. I'm going to speed it up.
That's all right. This is very interesting.
So this is more maintenance, long-term maintenance infrastructure improvements, not a lot to talk about, but we've started a rotating hydrant replacement program, annual leak survey. So this year we tested 50 miles of water mains, and the program will serve to do a survey of the entire system over 3 years. So about 50 miles a year. Annual valve exercise, 328 valves were inspected and operated in 2022. And again, we're going to do that on a rotating basis so that over a certain period of years, all valves have been exercised and tested. Maple tank rehab, major part of our infrastructure improvement. This is before, during, and after. So that was completed in May, and the tank has been placed back in service. Whitmer, we're getting ready to advertise for that. That's a picture of Whitmer tank as it currently exists. We do have some cell carriers on that tank, so as part of the painting, just as we did with Maple, they'll be relocating their antennas onto a temporary scaffold so that service can be maintained, and then the tank will be shrouded and it will be painted. So PFAS. So as you know, in 2015, we entered into an agreement with the Navy to perform certain remedial actions related to PFAS. So the original agreement started out at 7 and over various modifications, it went up to $18.3 million. So far we've spent over $14 million of that. So we still have $3.9 million remaining under the original cooperative agreement. Last year, they expanded the scope of the cooperative agreement, and you all may recall this, to include connecting homes with wells that were below 70, but were within a defined plume area. So the original cooperative agreement, they were only providing connections for properties that had concentrations over the 70. We did enter into a new agreement just weeks ago for about $400,000, and that will cover our O&M for the next 12 to 18 months. One of the things I did inquire with them about is how will the scope of services under these agreements change now that EPA has issued a new health advisory. And I have inquired numerous times, and I continue to be told they're awaiting guidance. So an example of a potential change might be that now any well that has a detection level, the military may fund it, but that remains to be seen. So we've been promoting the PFAS health study since January 2022, bill inserts, website, social media, things like that, signage. Long-term plan, the very last part of the long-term plan is underway, and that's the installation of permanent treatment systems at 10, 17, and 21. Those are Navy funded. They were originally expected to be back in service at the beginning of this year under the contract, but supply chain, we're now looking at second quarter of 2023 before they're done. Next couple slides are just pictures, pretty much all the same. The only difference is 21 has a floor. So those are the 3 wells. Well 26, this was also funded by the Navy and was part of our long-term plan. Well 26 was one of the first wells to get treatment, but due to the location of the well, it's in a very dense neighborhood. Every time we had to change carbon, we had to put up parking restrictions, and so this new bridge/culvert actually will allow us to access the site, or the tractor trailer with the carbon change out will be able to access via Sawyer's Way instead of having to go through the development. Speaking of GAC change out, so This shows just our change-out summary to date. So in total, we've done 21 change-outs. You'll see 26 was where we have changed things out the most. We get anywhere between 66 million and 200 million gallons of water treated between change-outs. You'll see it varies based on the yield of the well and the raw concentrations. And then we also have 4 wells that are already scheduled to be changed out. 26, the bridge will be used for the first time this month or next month. And then we have a couple other wells that will be changed out before the end of this year. Myria, we continue our recruitment for Myria connections. So in our first round, we did about 66 connections. This second round, phase 2, the bids were just received today. And we will be doing anywhere between 75 and maybe 90 or so connections, depending on how many more people might accept an offer of connection between now and when the contract is completed. We're also going to be doing some main extensions in order to provide service to some homes that have PFAS contamination. So we talked a little bit earlier about Butler and Welsh. We're also going to be doing Mullen. So those physical surveys are complete. But since we're going to be in Butler and Welsh, knowing how highly traveled they are, Welsh is the state road, we are doing a sewer survey. So we are asking people about interest in doing sewer at the same time as the water, just to be responsible. And we don't want to put water in and then find out next year that we have to go back and dig the road up because somebody needs sewer. So the sewer system is comprised of 5 drainage areas. You all pretty much know this. We finally completed the Area A flow transfer that I've been talking about for 3+ years. And you can see the results of that transfer there. In 2020, we were at just under our capacity allocation, and we are now at 1.836 million gallons a day, and that's our year-to-date through September of this year. The last step of the Area A pump station bypass, the area flow bypass, is the Easton Road pump station demolition. In order to complete that, the sewers need to be installed through the Hankin Tract. So that will be done as part of the development of the Hankin Tract. And then separately on the sewer side, Area C, the meter pit is located at Blair Mill and Whitmer. And so we are coordinating with Township and their intersection improvement program to relocate that meter pit in conjunction with that project. Repair and rehab reduces infiltration and inflow. Infiltration and inflow is unwanted water that's taken in by the sewer system, either by direct connections or via groundwater that just enters the pipes through joints and things like that. We use a recurring television program where we identify and prioritize areas that need to be rehabilitated. The last project we completed was in August 21 when we lined over 11,000 square lineal feet of sewer. In 2022 to 2023, we're going to be doing the area tributary to the Springbrook pump station. That is the area that was formerly Area A that we transferred over to Park Creek. So we just got bids for that today as well. Going forward on an annual basis, we'll be doing a minimum $250,000 a year investment in future rehab for the sewers.
But the sanitary sewer, they're in the streets, big plates that are
Yes.
sanitary sewer, right?
Right. The rehab can include, actually lining the pipe from inside.
A lot of them are sunken into the street, and I always wondered, do you get infiltrated from rainwater just like going into it?
Yes. So we will be rehabilitating manholes as part of that.
Raise them up to street level, so it just kind of.
Yeah, and there's a process that they use to seal a manhole on the inside. Sealing leaking laterals, root removal. So it's a pretty comprehensive rehabilitation project. Okay, system expansion. So I mentioned earlier about Butler and Welsh. So we are doing a sewer survey right there right now. We don't have enough results yet to present it to the board, but that will be presented in the next couple of meetings. Privet Road, we did a survey in 2019 and in fact extended the sewer to, I think it was, to 12 properties. However, when we did the original survey, there were about 18 included in that. And there was a section where there was a majority, and then there was a section where nobody wanted it. So we were able to scale the project down to serve only properties that mostly wanted it. And, well, that was done in 2020. This year, we got a call, somebody's got a failed system in the area where we didn't extend the sewer because people didn't want it. So we are now surveying those remaining 6 again. In Herman Road, we did a survey back a couple of years ago now, and that's in the area 729 to 819, right between, like near Downey Drive, that area. 11 properties were surveyed, 6-2 in favor, so we are proceeding with that project, and it was just awarded to AKC Mechanical. Moreland Road. So Moreland Road, we also surveyed for sewer, and a number of times in the past few years. The most recent survey, we did not have a majority of people who were interested in sewer. However, with the intersection improvements that are going to be occurring at Moreland and 611, we are exploring funding mechanisms and the possibility of doing the sewer installation with the intersection improvements. And then any other areas of the township, just like with water, we do have a few areas where, where we don't have sewer. Again, we don't proactively go out and put sewers in. We do a democratic process. We survey people. If a majority want it, we'll proceed with the project. So there's also some areas on Lower State Road that don't have sewer. There's a small section on Babylon Road that doesn't have sewer. We already talked numerous times about Butler and Welsh. So the next big project that we have, and it's the last slide, is a long-term water and sewer capacity analysis and needs evaluation. So this will project out 20 years what our projected growth and the capacity needs that'll be needed to meet those projections. So when it comes to water, some of the things that will go along with that is getting 10, 17, and 21 back in service. So we can get some of that capacity back. The feasibility of well 22, that goes to our sustainability, making sure that we can maintain these sources. The exploration of well 6, again, with knowing that we're going to need to be meeting expanded growth in the future. Our long-term purchase water agreements, those are also mechanisms we use to maintain availability of capacity. We're looking at treatment systems for wells 3 and 7, so we can get those returned to service. 3 and 7 would be a unique situation whereby the wells are located pretty closely to each other. Well 7, however, does not have, there's no room at the well 7 site to build a treatment system. So what we're exploring right now is actually combining those wells, building a main to combine those wells and build one treatment system at well 3 that will treat the water from both of the wells. We're also evaluating well 9 for a treatment system. So the only well that will be left that it's not in service and doesn't have treatment is well 1, and that's the well that's right at Maple Tank. And then our ongoing well rehabilitation program that I already touched on, that allows us to sustain capacity and yield. On the sewer side, the last time we did projections was in 2010 when we were expanding the Park Creek treatment plant. That plan included the Area A transfer. Since the Area A transfer, we have put the second train, so there's basically like 3 compartments to the treatment system. The first compartment does $1 million, and then the next 2 are $562,500 each, okay? So with the Area A transfer having been completed, we did have to put Train 2 in service this year, and we are now examining fit out of Train 3 to get prepared for that, and how and when that will be done will will be determined by this needs analysis. We're also doing pump station upgrades to the treatment plant, so that's the point where influent comes into the plant. Based on the additional capacity, we need to upgrade that to start meeting, increased flows and future flows. I&I reduction is another means of gaining back capacity by repairing sewers and eliminating the unwanted leaks. And we know that the surplus property below Maple is, I guess, as being considered for a potential transfer. So that will be flowing to Upper Moreland. And we had been negotiating with Upper Moreland for about 10 years on a new agreement, and our board just signed it at our last meeting, and Upper Moreland is scheduled to sign it tonight. So we will have finally gotten a new agreement with Upper Moreland, which will put us in a better position for negotiating capacity to serve that surplus property. If we even need more, we may be fine with what we have. Analysis of remaining properties. So the special study, what we did at the time is you look at all properties that have the potential to be subdivided. Maybe that's my...
That's your wording.
And so you do like a by right analysis and you say, okay, well, how many EDUs could be generated? So what we're going to want to do is renew that. So we're going to take a look at what the analysis that we did in 2010, compare it to what has happened since then, and that what may happen going forward. A couple of things that weren't contemplated in the 2010 plan was like the business parks master plan. That hadn't been developed when the 2010 plan was done. Life sciences is becoming a really popular use, and so we're seeing a lot of that, and those kind of have a heavier demand than some of your just standard office uses. So we'll be looking at that as part of the evaluation, and if all works well, this will time very well with the township updating its comprehensive plan. And that concludes.
Just a real quick question on the, I know like over the years, we've talked a lot about the I&I, and I know you've worked extremely hard to solve that issue. Can you give a perspective of, say, I don't know, 5-10 years ago versus today? Because I know it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
And sometimes it gets worse before it gets better because you can fix one area and other areas get worse.
Right. It is just by nature hard to quantify. The nice thing with the Springbrook area that we're going to be doing, that area all flows to a pump station. So we'll be able to quantify the improvement in that area. But it's not always easy to quantify. Tara, do you want to add anything on that I might have missed?
We talked about it, Springbrook thing specifically, because in the eastern end of the township that flows to Upper Moreland, that's the older end of the township. It has older pipe, it has more frequent joints. It's just going to be more susceptible to I&I, whereas the western portion of the township that flows to Park Creek is a lot of PVC pipe, and you don't see as much I&I. There's a lot of things that work. The I&I work helps, but climate change and that kind of stuff, we're seeing more storms, we're seeing heavier storms.
Sure.
So there's a lot of competing things here that honestly, if we can do enough work to stay steady and not get worse, there's also some areas where we think we might have to look at some pump connections that are direct to the sanitary sewer system, some areas that we don't think are really susceptible to I&I based on the infrastructure in the ground. So the source, but the flow's still going up in wet weather, which means that flow's coming from somewhere else.
Right.
So, it's if you talk to any authority around, we work with Upper Moreland and talk to them, and they're similar and have a lot of older areas of their system. It's challenging. Sometimes you line a pipe that's really old, and the groundwater just finds the next joint up and makes its way in somewhere else.
And I know it's a difficult thing to do, but it's commendable that you're making that effort, because in the long run, it makes a big difference to capacities, and then when you're thinking about further development of the township, and you're talking about the income, in relation to capacity, if you have a lot of I, and that means your capacity could be less for
You're
new
using-
development, and so staying on top of that is, I commend you for that, because that's, obviously, we have new developments that are going to take place, the air base someday, maybe.
Right.
And all that's got to play into a capacity issue, right? So when you're making those improvements, it just helps.
Yeah, and at the same time, bonus is that we're actually renewing old infrastructure. So, its goal is to help eliminate I, or at least reduce it, but it also actually renews pipes that, basically it forms a new pipe with this cured-in-place lining, so. Yeah. So it's as though we put a whole brand-new sewer in. So, you're kind of achieving two goals. You're renewing some of your aged infrastructure, and you're also trying to gain back capacity that might be being, absorbed by.
And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody else, you have any questions?
I just want to thank Tina, Terry, the board. We are so fortunate to have a local-owned authority. We wouldn't be having these meetings annually, and the work that these people do, they're not popular. They are a utility company, so they're not popular with their ratepayers most of the time. But what we did with PFAS with them wouldn't have happened if Aqua PA or some other private corporation owned the water system in Horsham. So, Tina and Terry and their team do an amazing job. They work very hard, long hours, and are very loyal and committed to our community and our residents. And I want to thank them for that, because they don't get thanked that much, being a utility company. So thank you, Tina, Jack, Ken, Terry. Thank you for all you do.
And I'll just real quick to piggyback on that, I just want to thank you for the presentation, because I know you had to put a lot of time into this. Like you said, you do so much work and you don't realize what you've done, because you're so busy doing other stuff and planning for the future and whatever, and then you look back and say, oh my God, look at all the stuff we did. And to put this presentation together, I know just took a lot of effort from everybody, and it really helps us. It really does, because the more knowledge we have, the better we can help you down the road when you need what you need. So, it was a great presentation. I loved it. I thought it was great. And,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
again, thanks to everybody for that. I really, on behalf of council, thank you for all that. For coming here tonight and sharing it with us. And hopefully, when we do this again next year, you'll have more great news. But again, thanks. I really do appreciate it.
All right, and thank you for the opportunity.
Take care, guys. I'll call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Before we start, just make mention that Terry Harmon is joining us via telephone tonight as she is traveling. First is the opportunity for questions or comments. Yes, sir. I think you know the routine, right?
Good evening, William Slaymaker, address, right? 104 Crabapple Lane in Hatboro. So it's been a little while since I came and spoke to you. Kind of took the summer off from these meetings. And I just wanted to come by and personally invite you. We have a fundraiser on Saturday evening for Miracle Field of Horsham. It is our first annual fundraiser there. Ticket sales have been rather robust recently. We are expecting about 450 maybe-ish to 500 people to attend. So we're looking forward to a rather successful fundraising night. And I really just wanted to make sure you guys all knew about it and were welcome to attend. And Mr. Nesbitt, you were asking me for for an electronic copy of this Miracle Field brochure, and there must be some type of proprietary rule against making this electronic. But I did find this, and I'm personally, this is your copy.
And I can scan it?
And you can scan it.
Break all the proprietaries?
Yeah. If you can also make it electronic and make it small enough to email, I would appreciate it. So, again, I appreciate your
Down
support.
to Mr. Walker.
Who will then give it to Mr. Whiteside?
But thank you for this.
Yes,
This is
you're
awesome.
welcome. I appreciate your support as we
I will
move
be there.
forward. I think it's going to be a rather exciting year for our organization, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Awesome. Congratulations. Thank you again. Anyone else? Yes, sir. And you know the routine, for sure.
Andy Starr, 926 Langdon Avenue. I think I want to start off first by echoing Township Council with thanking the Water Department. I know every time I turn on my water, it flows. It's either cold or really cold, and so I do think they do a great job. The PFO and PFOS thing has been a disaster, but I think our township and the Water Authority has done a spectacular job with trying to fix something that just doesn't typically happen everywhere. But the reason I'm here today is to talk a little bit about the voting season that we're getting ready to start in again here in Pennsylvania, specifically here in Horsham Township. And I'm here to talk about Dominion voting machines. And I know we use those apparently exclusively, at least in the voting spot that I go to. And I have a couple of things I want to bring up before I get to my request tonight, if I could. And that is, starting here in Pennsylvania, Fulton County sues Dominion. Apparently, they've been embroiled with the PA Supreme Court and all kinds of legislation about a voting machine, which I find just unbelievable. I mean, it's a voting machine. It should be lock, stock, and barrel, completely accurate without any type of issue. And apparently, they found some discrepancies due to inaccuracy and inability to reconcile voter data with votes cast. I think that's a big problem. Did not meet the conditions for certification, which is a problem. The ability to hack in order to hack or control the access physically or remotely, that's a problem, I would think. I also found a Dominion machine on eBay. So that means there was a lack of accountability, and certainly what happens to this machine, how did they get out? You know, there's a long chain of command and custody that happens with those. A Dominion failed logic test in an El Paso County, Colorado. Test of 4,000 ballots. This is a testing of a machine to make sure it can read 4,000 ballots correctly. 60% of those, or 2,200, were kicked out for adjudication, which basically means I can't read this. Someone is going to have to count it for me using their own eyes and hands, which is ripe for fraud. Georgia, Missouri issue statements regarding vulnerabilities of Dominion. And who hasn't seen those crazy videos after hours of large suitcases being pulled out and being fed to Dominion machines? Once again, fraud. So some other stuff, fill out ballots by themselves, software issues, erroneous codes, blah, 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 blah. The point is, I'm going to put this down here real quick. If we take a look, this is, I want to present this to you. It's the Voting System Standards, Volume 1 Performance Standards. This is our Federal Election Integrity Act. I'm going to use it as a guide because, quite frankly, that's really all we have, so we can pull up some numbers. And basically it says here, for each processing function indicated above, hand count, machine count, whatever the case may be, the system shall achieve a target error rate of no more than 10 million ballot positions with a maximum acceptable rate test process of 1 in 500,000 ballots. In other words, one mistake in 500,000 ballots. So with a count of about 30,000 here in Horsham Township, that's a 16-time or 16-fold discrepancy rate, which means we should never, ever, ever, ever have a discrepancy in the vote here in Horsham Township. And with some of the stuff I have there, and there's a litany of other issues with Dominion, I don't feel that my vote is being counted correctly. I don't have confidence in the system. And if I don't have confidence in the system, a system that we rely on in order to carry this constitutional republic, then if the vote is not right, we basically have a banana republic. And I don't want to live in a banana republic. I want my vote to count. I don't know anybody up here that doesn't want their vote to count. So, that being said, we've been counting votes in this country for darn near almost 250 years. I don't understand why in the past 2 years it's been so hard to count votes in this country, and why we have so many issues with this new technology that is leaving a lot of us feeling that we just are not being heard or our vote counting. We're being disenfranchised. So my request here tonight is I would like to return here in Horsham Township to a system that works, a system that when I voted years ago, when I was, a poll watcher and seeing the vote at the end of the night, slip of paper, all the votes, the whole 9 yards, there was a comfort level. I don't have a comfort level, and I'm going to got one more story for you if I could. So in May, when I went to the library to cast my ballot, and I mentioned to the young lady, scratch that, the lady that was working the Dominion machine, make sure I was feeding it in right. I kind of gave her a snarky comment, and I was like, these Dominion machines, I don't know if I trust them. And she says, well, too bad, they're here to stay. And I kind of took that as a slap in the face. That was, I don't care what you think, I don't care how you feel about this voting machine, you're never going to change it because I'm counting the vote. And I felt disenfranchised at that moment. So my request is, I want to go back to the old system. And that's it. Don't let the system disenfranchise me anymore. Thank you.
So I'm going to kind of defer a little bit to Mayor because I don't know how much you know about it, but I know that we're kind of not in control of, because
I
it
know
is,
it's Montgomery County.
it's a county issue,
Yeah.
and we can't in Horsham just say, well, we don't want these, we want
Yeah.
something else. So,
I mean,
you know.
that whole Montgomery County thing with Valor Couche is a total disaster over there. And it really is. And you know what? I still think that as an autonomous people, we have the ability to do this. You know what I'm saying? The problem is that if we go to Montgomery County and say, hey, we're just not comfortable with this, let's just go back and do what we used to do. We knew that was 100% accurate, and they say no. Well, I do think then we should be using the force of our local power, because why is it such a big deal? If we're feeling disenfranchised, why can't we just say, well, we'll just go back? What happens if the vote is counted the old way and it's accurate, and you're thinking this is accurate? What is the difference? I get it. I totally get it. And I knew that was going to be a response. I know.
Yeah, I wish I had a better answer for you too,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I know.
Less enough people got together and went to the county and said,
Yeah.
But I sympathize with your thoughts.
But thank you for hearing me out. I appreciate
Sure.
it.
Anybody else? Not that anyone else is here? Okay. Next is approval of minutes.
I move to approve.
Move to approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Treasurer's report, Bill?
The balance in the general fund as of September 30th, 2022 is $6,359,244.76. For the most part, the expenses and revenues in all funds reflect normal activity for September. As of the end of the month, we have received 100.4% of budget revenue and have expended 67.11% of budget expenses. The cost of inflation continues to affect our budget, especially in regards to fuel and utility cost. I expect this to continue to occur for the remainder of this year. We are monitoring it closely, and I do believe we will be able to manage the increased costs due to our conservative budgeting practices. For a more detailed presentation of our current financial position, I would refer you to your monthly booklet.
Move to approve the list of checks in all funds in the amount of $2,008,330.24, and further move to authorize payment of the same.
Second.
Been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Also move to ratify the U.S. Bank credit card transactions for the month of September 2022 in the amount of $7,785.60.
Second.
Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And just a real quick comment, I meant to say it before, so the checklist is very large. You see that this time of year. So we got in the money, the state money that goes to the Horsham Fire Company in the amount of $250,000. We also received the state money for our pension plans, which is coming up later in the resolution. That was $646,000. So there were those normal things that uptick our checklist this month.
Okay, next is the resolution to waiver of land development for Aqua, Pennsylvania.
This is for Blair Mill Road, for their wells 6 and 8. They did get their conditional use approval, and they were in front of you at your meeting last for a review of their waiver of land development, and their resolution is ready for your consideration this evening.
I move to approve the resolution as proposed, approving a waiver of land development with conditions for the Aqua PA wells 6 and 8, 2 Blair Mill Road for the construction of a PFAS treatment facility.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. This is a roll call vote.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Next is an amendment to the Michael Baker International Contract Services Agreement.
As you know, Michael Baker International is our township traffic consultant. They are under a certain individual contract for services relating to the Blair Mill Road widening Phase 2 project, and they have a request for amendment to continue working on that. We are scheduled to receive bids October 20th, but they did have to put in some extra work with PennDOT review and comments.
I move to authorize amending the agreement with Michael Baker International in the amount of $11,760 as per the letter dated September 30th, 2022 for engineering services for the Blair Mill Road widening project, Phase 2 project.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Also moved to authorize amending the agreement with Michael Baker International in the amount of $85,140 as per the letter dated October 6, 2022 for engineering services for the Horsham Road and Limekiln Pike intersection improvement project.
Second.
Moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Ayes have it. All right. I think we covered the next item. Next would be consider a proposal from SMM Consulting to assist with the FEMA flood mitigation.
So we are trying to help a property owner in Horsham on McKean Road. It's 254 McKean Road. Their house, their entire house is in the floodplain, and every tropical storm, hurricane, and sometimes even heavy rainstorms, the house is totally flooded. They have not been in their house since September 1st of last year when the tornado and flood hit Horsham Township. This SMM Consulting, all they do is FEMA applications. They're very detailed, very cumbersome. We're under a November 16th deadline. So they've given us a proposal for $3,000 to assist our fire marshal, Matt Reinhardt, to make this application. If we're successful in it, and we've been told by everyone at FEMA, and including this consulting agency with what they know, we should be able to get, FEMA should be able to award the grant. And what would happen is FEMA would buy the property from the property owner. The house would be demolished, and then the open space and ground would be turned over to the township, similar to what happened on Olive Avenue a number of years ago. And we would get our $3,000 back from FEMA. That would be included in the grant application that we get reimbursed for the consulting fees.
Okay. We have a motion.
I move to authorize an agreement with SMM Consulting in the amount of $3,000 to make a FEMA flood mitigation assistance grant application for 245 McKean Road.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Next is consider a resolution distributing foreign casualty tax money to the pension funds. Bill, we need a motion for that, and we don't see one here.
There is not a motion. I apologize.
We'll have to just make one up.
Yep.
So you can just tell us what that's about, and then we'll make up a motion.
Sure. The amount that we received this year from the state is $647,556.48, and that is restricted and required by law to be put to our pension plans. So the breakout would be $184,803 to the Pennsylvania Municipal Retirement System for our non-uniformed employee pension plan, and the balance in the amount of $462,753.48 be deposited in the police pension fund.
Okay, now you said that so fast, I hope Bill wrote it all down.
I missed half of it.
You don't-
First
you don't-
half.
you don't
So
need
just
all
the
those
second
numbers.
number. 462,753. I move to transfer balances to the PA Municipal Retirement System.
Yes.
In the amount of $645,556.48.
No. 100.
$184,803. And then also to the police pension fund in the amount of $462,753.48.
Second.
All right.
Roll call vote.
Is it roll call vote? Good teamwork there, fellas.
Sorry about that.
It is a roll call vote, though.
Ms. Harmon, how do you vote? Mr. Nesbitt, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
Mr. Whiteside, how do you vote?
I vote aye.
And Mr. McCouch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Before we adjourn, just two things I'd like to mention is our comprehensive plan community survey is, deadline is October 31st. So if anyone wants to get on, go to www.horsham.org, and you can participate in the survey itself. On October 20th, which is a Thursday, from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m., right here in the Township Community Center, or across the way in the Township Community Center, there will be a comprehensive plan open house. So we invite all people to attend that as well. With there being no further items on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.